Welcome back to the channel here. Hawk and Carlton coming to you from the Highland greenhouse this time. In a little bit cramped quarters here because I'm sharing with you a plant that has kind of entwined itself in the base of some of the shelf legs here, but it's in bloom right now, and so I wanted to share with you guys. It's a very, very easy to grow species of orchid, actually, and it's commonly known as the fire star orchid. This is Epidendrum radicans. This is a species that is native to Central America into northern South America, so from middle to southern Mexico down into northern Venezuela and Colombia. They grow as these tall cane-like stems. Usually they're terrestrial orchids, which first off, that makes them a lot easier to grow than a lot of epiphytes because they're rooted in the ground, so they're a lot more used to denser soils, sometimes a lot more moisture, so they're much easier to deal with. And as they grow, they form these stems up to sometimes can be more than 4 feet tall. With alternating leaves, they kind of clasp the central stem in the middle here, and then they come out. They're semi-ovular to lanceolate in shape. They can reach up to about 4 inches long in some cases. The bigger stem back here that's blooming actually has much larger leaves, and you can kind of see those in the back there. But as they grow up, they'll often be kind of semi-erect. They'll self-support to some extent, but they'll also use surrounding vegetation to support themselves and grow. Or they'll actually climb up on the sides of small tree trunks and such. And as they do so, they will, this is kind of a diagnostic feature of this too, they will produce these aerial roots that come out right at the base between each of these leaves here, and those will spread out. They'll grasp onto, again, tree trunks and such if they're growing that way, or if they fall over and start spreading across the ground, they'll root into the soil and may actually produce new sprouts along the length of that cane. But once they're actually mature and fully grown up, the end of the stem shifts from producing these leaves to a bunch of little papery bracts along a very long, slender stem, at the end of which is this big cluster of beautiful flowers. Now, like most orchids, they have your standard tepals that actually look like your usual petals. They have 5 of those that splay out around the base of the bloom, and then they have one odd, very, very odd modified petal right in the middle here that comes out. It's kind of hollow in the middle, and that's where the reproductive organs actually are. And it comes out and kind of becomes broad and frilly and crenellated, splays out into all these little tiny frilled tips here. And those colors attract pollinators. People are not entirely sure what pollinates these plants. It could be hummingbirds, since they do have those bright colors, the oranges and reds that hummingbirds like to have. There's some milkweeds that have very similar colors, Asclepias species, and similar arrangement of flowers. So some people believe that they might also actually be pollinated by things like monarch butterflies. But they have a long tubular section underneath that main flower that holds the promise of nectar, but they often don't actually produce a whole lot of nectar. They're kind of a trickster flower in that way, like many orchids are. But when an insect comes in, they'll go into that little section either with their proboscis, or if it's a small insect, with their entire head. And they'll go in there and they'll get pollinia, little packets of pollen stuck to them. And when they fly to the next flower, either on the same stem or on a different plant, hopefully, because they're hoping to cross-pollinate, those pollinia will stick to the stigma that's on the upper part of this funky lower petal here. And once that's pollinated, the flower drops off, and that long, thick section of the flower underneath, that's where the ovary is sitting, and that will swell up and produce, like a lot of other orchids, these tiny little dust-like seeds. There can be thousands of them in a single seed pod, and those spread out on the wind into the soil surrounding, and the seeds hope that they will come in contact with an appropriate type of kind of mycorrhizal wood-rotting fungus. Because most orchids, they require, because the seeds are so tiny, they don't have any nutrients really in them to actually support the growth of the seedling themselves. So they require pairing with a species of fungus that will connect to the seed and provide the seed with sugars and carbon sources and such, nitrogen, to allow the seedling to actually start sprouting and growing. They become these very tiny little filamentous growths at the start that are barely noticeable in the soil, and then after a few months they'll produce their first tiny little leaf, and from there then they can start supporting themselves. They'll start photosynthesizing and growing up, and they'll form those new canes on their own. So because this is a terrestrial tropical species, and because it's a relatively intermediate elevation tropical species, they're usually found between 900 and 2,500 meters in elevation. So roughly 3,000 to about 8,000 feet in elevation. These guys grow in warm to relatively cool conditions, and so that makes them really good for kind of household environments. Even better for slightly more humid environments like the Highland greenhouse that I'm in here. To grow them, all you really need is some sort of moist, moderately nutrient-rich acid soil. Growing them, just like a lot of tropical pitcher plants, nepenthes, can work really well for them. I actually have these guys in kind of a mix of sphagnum moss, cocoa chips, a little bit of peat in there, and a little bit of regular soil as well. And they're occasionally given a little soil drench of orchid fertilizer diluted in water. So just generally a nice moist soil that's kept moist, not wet, but not dry either, but just generally moist. You plant them in that, and they'll send their first aerial roots down into that soil, and then as they grow up higher, they'll use their other roots to kind of clasp around whatever they are near in order to support themselves and grow. If that contacts another pot as well, they'll send the root into that to gather more moisture. But you can plant them there and have them in a moderately bright location either. They will do well in full sun, but they'll also take much shadier conditions as well. The brighter light they get, the more erect, the more self-supporting that they will be. The lower light they have, the more scrambling they will tend to grow. So they can be pretty adaptable. And then, again, moderately warm conditions, preferably daytime temperatures between 75, 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Nighttime dropping down to 65, 70 degrees Fahrenheit works pretty well for these guys. That a couple times a month spritz of orchid fertilizer, or if you forget, they'll do well every 1 or 2 months, decent drench of fertilizer. That will allow them to grow up. And then once they start flowering, of course, nothing really needs to be done. You don't need to fertilize the flowers or anything, because it's hard for your average person to actually get the seeds to grow right. So simply enjoy the flowers when they occur. And if you want more plants, they're extremely easy to propagate. These guys can simply be basically chopped up and thrown on the soil and wait. As long as a piece has a root on it or is kind of dug into the soil so it doesn't dry out before it forms its own root, it will start to form its roots, take in the moisture, and between the leaves, just like where the roots come out on these stems here, they also have on the opposite side a little bud down within the leaf base here. And if you cut between the leaves, that little bud will eventually activate and it will form a brand new cane. So every single piece may turn into a new cane, a new orchid. And so simply lay those out across the soil, you get a whole bunch of canes growing up, and you might have a whole colony, a whole stand of these guys, which can flower all at the same time and produce a really impressive display. And of course, if you don't want too many canes, all those cuttings, you can simply sell them off to other people. Very easy orchid to grow, quite beautiful when it's in full bloom as well, and certainly I think a worthy addition to just about anyone's plant collection. Now that is all that I have for this species here today. If there's something that I've missed, questions that you have, certainly feel free to leave them in the comments below the video here. If you'd like to learn more about the plants that I work with or the animals that I work with, consider visiting the website at carltoncarnivores.com, where the blog and database are. Or you can find me on social media, where I'm always posting photos and video tidbits and such on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc. at Carlton Carnivores. If you would like to help support the production of these videos, first off, watching these videos all the way through, subscribing to the channel really helps boost the channel and gets us closer to monetization that way. But you can also buy the plants and merchandise that I often have available on my website shop, or become a Patreon member. Members there get early access to these videos, access to the monthly seed contest and exclusive merchandise, and more. You can also donate at Ko-fi or simply contact me for other methods. Links for most of these things will be in the video description below. But until next time, I'm Hawken Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.